is. Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 16. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble and did shake kingdoms? Right? And the Edomites currently do that now. They essentially have all of the earth in subjection underneath them, although that is rapidly changing. But through weapons, technology, missiles, and so on and so forth, they are able to cast fear over all the other nations, raining fire from the sky in the form of missiles, among other things. So moving on to this idea of the pole flips happening soon. It's going to be a time of great destruction, and the book of Matthew talks about that. From then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. So here this is the Messiah speaking of the end times. Let's see what else it says up here. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end comes. And I believe here the disciples were trying to understand, okay, well, how are we going to be able to identify the end times? And of course, during that period of time when the disciples and the Messiah were walking the earth, the gospel actually hadn't been preached into all nations, but it is now, through such methods like the internet, the information superhighway, where anyone, anywhere in the world can access the internet and now access the testimonies and the witness of the gospel being preached by the prophets of the nation of Israel. There's another article that I wanted to go. And pull up. I believe it came from a United Kingdom news source, or UK news outlet. Too long. Come on. There it is. You can see that this news article is picked up by a lot of different places. Earth's magnetic field flipped 42,000 years ago, creating a climate disaster that wiped out the Neanderthals, and it could happen again, study warns. Australian researchers have found radiocarbon spikes in ancient kauri trees. They revealed a breakdown of Earth's magnetic field that sparked climate shifts. Climate change, big topic right now. The lead up to this breakdown led to lethal radiation exposure and extinctions. A reversal of the magnetic poles 40,000 years ago triggered catastrophic climate change and may have wiped out Neanderthals, a new study shows. Australian researchers have analyzed a radiocarbon record from ancient trees in New Zealand that were alive when the magnetic poles flipped. The trees, there's no 42,000-year-old trees. The trees revealed spikes in atmospheric radiocarbon levels caused by the collapse of Earth's magnetic field and changing solar winds. But preceding the flip was a weakening of the magnetic field, causing electrical storms, crimson skies, widespread auroras, and lethal cosmic radiation that frazzled our early ancestors and the Earth's wildlife. Maybe part of the reason why they're doing all of that chemtrailing, right, is to protect themselves from the lethal cosmic radiation. If you have leprosy, right? You don't have pigment in your skin. This is probably a lot more dangerous to you than someone that has melanin, right? In the Israelites, for the most part, uh, are heavily melanated people, although not necessarily all of the tribes because of their intermingling with the other nations. The researchers dubbed this dangerous period the Adams Transitional Geomagnetic Event, or Adams Event for short. Interesting. A tribute to science fiction writer Douglas Adams. The British author famously wrote in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that 42 was the answer to life, the universe, and everything is garbage. With the Earth's magnetic field having weakened by around 9% in the past 170 years, researchers warned that the next apocalyptic polar flip may be just around the corner. Another interesting take. What do I have here in Matthew? So one of the things that comes from that is earthquakes and volcanoes. So as we saw in one of the other articles, the Earth has a molten core and outer, I guess, another outer molten outer molten uh, layer, and it's composed of essentially liquid, very very hot iron that's in liquid form. And so iron, of course, being an element that is heavily influenced by magnets. If you have some and you have a magnet, you, depending on the size of the iron, either the iron's going to go fly to the magnet or the magnet's going to fly to stick onto the iron. So if the magnetic poles of the Earth flipping or changing or moving around, imagine what that's doing to the molten iron that forms the Earth core. Just tons and tons, and probably, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of tons of molten iron now being shifted and spun around in ways that it hadn't been disturbed before. It's gonna lead to no doubt catastrophe. Let's take a look at what I have here in Psalms 49 and 11. And really, the nation of Edom doesn't think it's going to happen, in the sense that the destruction isn't going to touch them or they'll be untouched by it. Their inward, Psalms 49 and 11, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. The last part being a reference to, America Vespucci, Africa, named after Roman general Leo Scipius Africanus, or something along those lines, right? They name lands after themselves, another way you can identify the Edomites. But they think that they're never going to end, that they're just going to go on forever and ever, right? And that they'll rebuild, or they'll hide in their bunkers or their domes or deep underground military bases, or they'll hide in the ocean, or they'll, get a blimp and go into the air during this period of time, and that they'll be able to come back to the earth or the land and rebuild and repopulate and re-rule, after the quote-unquote Great Reset. It's not going to happen, and the scriptures speak to that. But that's part of their great pride, right? Obadiah 1 and 3, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me to the ground? But the Edomites will very quickly find themselves in a position where they can no longer continue to rationalize themselves as God. They're not a God, they're a man, and they're going to be brought down. Verse 4, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and thou that set thy nest amongst the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Most High. Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Lucifer here it's not a reference to this fictional, made up devil that rebelled against the Most High and took the third of the angels from heaven. No, this is a reference to the light bearer, and the light bearer during this period of time are the Edomites, right? They hold the wisdom and knowledge of this world. Everyone looks unto them for that wisdom and knowledge. So that's what the reference to Lucifer is. We can, in fact, go into this word and see what it says. Outline of biblical uses. Lucifer, light bearer. Here's another one. Describing the king of Babylon. Right? They're going to be brought down so fast. Revelation 18 and 17. For in 1 hour so great riches has come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by the sea stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning. This is Babylon the Great, saying, what city is like unto this great city? So the other nations are going to see America, the stronghold, one of the strongholds of the Edomites, fall apart in 1 hour from the great destruction that's going to happen. And again, part of that great destruction is going to come from the pole flips. This is an article from National Geographic. Even just a few years back, they were speaking on the pole, longer than that, but they're speaking on the pole flips and saying, oh no, we're not all doomed. We're going to be fine. It's not an issue. Many times over our planet's history, Earth's magnetic poles have reversed, meaning that sometimes a compass pointing north will be aimed at Antarctica rather than the Arctic. Like it's a very light thing. This might sound strange, but it's a relatively predictable quirk powered by the machinations of the planet's spinning iron core. This process of geomagnetic reversal has been doing its thing without much fanfare for aeons. So again, just going back to Psalms, they just think that their houses are going to continue forever and they'll be fine. And as the light bearers of this world, whatever they say goes, and that's the truth. I want to pull the scripture Bible. Thou art a man and not a god. Yeah, here it is. Ezekiel chapter 28 and verse 9. Let me set that up.